Right. So before I kind of kick off here, I thought I would just let you know where our office sits in the greater scheme of the Coast Guard and kind of what we do. So this kind of gives you an idea of the prevention organization, both in terms of policy. So those of us who are at headquarters, in operations, those of the Coast Guard's men and women that you see in the field on a daily basis. So we all work for the Commandant of the Coast Guard. Those of us who are on the policy side, we work, at least in my side of the house, we work for the Deputy Commandant for Operations, who is a 3-star Admiral, Admiral Bushman. The Assistant Commandant for Prevention Policy, who is Admiral John Mauger, who just took the seat about a week ago. And then if you look over there to your left, the Office of Commercial Vessel Compliance is under the Director of Inspections and Compliance. So my boss is Captain Wayne Arguin, and within his directorate, we have the Office of Commercial Vessel Compliance, Office of Investigation and Analysis. They handle marine casualties and analysis. And then there's other offices that fall in there, such as the Office of Boating Safety, facilities. There's a National Vessel Documentation Center. There's quite a few people over on that side. And together, our offices form the policies for the Coast Guard for compliance standards. The other two, I would say, sister directorates to our compliance directorate is the commercial regulations and standards. As it sounds, these are the engineers and reg writers that create and evaluate regulations. And then the Director of Marine Transportation Systems, that is the group that manages waterways management and navigation, including ice breaking and aids to navigation, and then all the variety of waterway management activities. And then if we look over on the right-hand side, there's operations. And so this is kind of important because if you ever have a problem with someone in the Coast Guard at the field level and you want to elevate this kind of gives you an idea of who that next person you can talk to. So on this side, I'm going to start all the way at the bottom on the right-hand side. You have the chief within the prevention department. You have the chief of inspections division or the chief of the investigations division. Those are where the marine inspectors and the marine investigators work within those divisions within the sector. Above them, there's a prevention department head, a sector commander, a district commander, which is so the sector commander is a captain, the district commander is an admiral, and the area commander is a 3-star admiral. So, one thing I always encourage people to do is if you don't like the interpretation or you disagree with the interpretation that you're getting at the lowest level within the field, please feel free to bump it up that chain of command. Eventually, after it goes up through the district commander, it comes over to our office for final agency action and adjudication. Within the Office of Commercial Vessel Compliance, we call ourselves CVC. We have 4 divisions. We just added a 4th division about 3 years ago now. But CVC 1 is the Domestic Vessels and Outer Continental Shelf Division. So they're handling a lot of the subchapter T and K small passenger vessels, outer continental shelf activities, barges, towing vessels, all of those domestic vessel issues. CVC 2, Port State Control, so they're handling foreign vessel issues when they come into the United States. CVC 3 is the Fishing Vessel Safety Division. So we have 3 members there that kind of monitor about 60,000 commercial fishing vessels nationally. And our newest division, CVC 4, which we call Flag State Control, they provide oversight of our third parties, as well as represent the US flag in the international arena with IMO and for other countries. All right, and so collectively, what do we look at Coast Guard wide? I've broken this up. This graphic is actually out of our annual Flag State Control report. And if you haven't seen that, I'd encourage you to to take a look. It's a pretty interesting report that we started doing a couple of years ago, and it really looks at the US commercial vessel fleet in terms of what is its makeup, what are the top deficiencies for each type of vessel, and the types of marine casualties that we're seeing. But all told, we have about 690 marine inspectors nationally. We do about 19,000, we have about 19,000 inspected vessels, and we do another 9,000 or so port state control exam on an annual basis. And below there, you can see the kind of the breakup between barges, cargo vessels, passenger vessels, and the latest towing vessels. And so I brought this up just from a smaller passenger vessel view. What is the makeup of the small passenger vessel fleet look like? And this is going to come into play a little bit later when I talk about some of the initiatives that we've done regarding risk-based inspection programs. So the population is really heavily weighted between the 7th Coast Guard District, so down in the southeast part of the United States, 1st Coast Guard District within the New England area, the 8th Coast Guard District. While it says there's a lot of small passenger vessels, a lot of those are crew boats or those serving the outer continental shelf, D8, D5, and so on. I will say that Sector Baltimore, or Sector National Capital Region now, they have one of the largest fleets of small passenger vessels in the country. So they're really boosting that, that count there in the 5th Coast Guard District. And then you can see what are small passenger vessels made up of. Most of them tend to be fiberglass. Aluminum is a close second, with steel followed by wood. There's a graphic that shows the number of casualties. And down there in the bottom, you can see a scatter plot of the different build years of small passenger vessels. So we tend to have a pretty old fleet, although there are some newer vessels that have been coming into service. All right, so before I get right into the conception, I'd like to just kind of give you a timeline of where we've been over the last 6 years or so. And I would say most of, and these were, I think, the major milestones recently that has really caused a shift in the way the Coast Guard has approached marine inspections or the vessel compliance program. The first would be the loss of the El Faro in October 15. 33 mariners died on the El Faro as it transited between Jacksonville and Puerto Rico. The Bouchard barge 255 explosion, which 2 mariners were killed in that accident. The Island Lady, which caught on fire. This was down in Florida. While there was only one, well, fortunately, unfortunately, there was one passenger death, but fortunately, a lot more people were saved. This could have really been a much worse casualty if the vessel had not been so close to shore and the captain was able to beach the vessel. And so you can see in the picture in the bottom there that people were kind of jumping off the vessel and wading into shore. You know, if that had happened mid-ocean or that had happened in the middle of the night, that could have been another Conception-like event. In July of 2018, we had the Stretch Duck 7, which in Missouri, that went down with 17 passengers deaths, and then finally the Conception with 33 passenger deaths and 1 crew member, most recently in California. So, you know, on each one of these, there's a Marine board that looks into it. That can be a drawn out process, but I can tell you that immediately following a casualty, the Coast Guard looks quickly at what we feel are the underlying root causes, and we take action within the compliance world to try to prevent future occurrences. Okay, so specifically looking at the Conception and Stretch Duck, total 51 lives were lost. With the Conception, this prompted a concentrated inspection campaign, a CIC, the results of which had us do some sweeping changes to how we do business internally. And I think you're going to see some effects to the industry as well. The four main ones that I would say are risk-based inspections for small passenger vessels, improved data capture and analysis so that we can be smarter at how we do our inspections, revisions to our job aids so our marine inspectors are looking at the right things, and then finally safety management systems and a focus on human factors. I think what you will find in more than 80% of the casualties, it comes down to the failure of the human on board, not so much the failure of the equipment. All right, so I have a series of pictures that I got following our concentrated inspection campaign. So this was a Coast Guard focused inspection on overnight passenger vessels. And we sent inspectors out with some very specific focus items. And so some of you may have had marine inspectors on board as part of this exam. And really we sent them to look at electrical, egress, or the two primary, but as well as fire protection and fire safety systems. Here's an example of a burnt surge protector that a marine inspector found, obviously overloaded. Here's a picture that, again, these were as part of a normal inspection, what they would run across. Extension cords that were being used as permanent wiring installation in a wheelhouse. And if you'll notice there's a cabinet that the wire is kind of getting crunched over there. There was an outlet adjacent to an AC unit where the condensate could drip into the AC unit or into the electrical outlet itself. Some bunk arrangements that would not facilitate emergency egress and didn't meet the requirements for passengers. Bunks that were too small that someone couldn't really get out of. Mattresses that were not covered with flame resistant properties. So, if these caught on fire, they would just, the toxic smoke as well as the accelerant would cause the fire to spread. Inadequate emergency escape ladders. So, if you're looking at this, there were footholds put into a door that someone would crawl up through the emergency escape hatch. CO2 arrangement stored in accommodation space. In fact, they had cut out part of the mattress there to put the time delay bottle. And then one that I find particularly disturbing was an escape hatch that had an AC unit that was bolted on top of it, and evidently for a period of time. So following this concentrated inspection campaign and following that data that came back to us, the Assistant Commandant for Prevention Policy, who at the time was Rear Admiral Timmy, chartered a small passenger vessel safety task force, which was led out of the Office of Commercial Vessel Compliance, but it included members from a variety of different offices within Coast Guard headquarters, as well as field representation. And what he told us to do was basically look at four different things. He wanted to have us look at data analysis, trends, and creating a dashboard. He wanted us to look at risk-based targeting, creating better job aids for inspectors, and providing a recommendation on safety management systems. Oops, sorry, let me go back. The data analysis and trends dashboard, I kind of showed you a little bit of that when I first started. We now have a better system at which we keep a better pulse on what is the condition of the fleet, how many deficiencies are being issued on a port by port basis, and for what items. So the next one, risk-based inspection program. We see this as a modernized approach to the marine inspection program. And it shifts from an equal effort on all vessels to an increased focus on vessels that pose the greatest risk. Now, I know in the Sector Baltimore, Sector NCR region, they had previously adopted a risk-based inspection program that was outlined in CVC Policy Letter 1604. They were one of the few sectors that were already using that. And what it essentially does is the data that the officer in charge marine inspection has provides a scoring system so that vessels that have a low score, they can do a focused inspection on rather than a full-blown annual or COI inspection. But what we did nationally is kind of mirror that program. And it uses data to inform the officer in charge marine inspection and offers comparison of local fleets to their national fleet. And it establishes a national minimum inspection process for each vessel and promotes consistency across OCMIs. So rather than everybody getting the same inspection, there's going to be a minimum level of inspection set from Coast Guard headquarters, and then a recommendation to the OCMI on how they should expand that inspection based on the type of vessel or the individual vessel that they're on, as well as where is that vessel within its COI cycle. We use a tier system, a tier 1, 2, or 3 to identify the level of effort that the OCMI should apply to that vessel. Tier 1 vessels are what we would consider the highest level of effort that the OCMI has to apply. It doesn't assume that the vessel is not in compliance with the regulation, but rather there are elements either within that vessel or similar vessels that suggest that we just need to take a closer look. For these vessels, owners and operators should expect attendance from our most experienced marine inspectors. So we're putting the A team out on these vessels. The annual inspection will align closer to what we would see during a COI renewal inspection. So it's going to be more thorough. We're going to look at more items. Additionally, because we know that human factors are a major source of casualties, there's a follow-on inspection that will enable the marine inspector to view the vessel in an operating status. We recognize that typically when we go out, the vessel's stripped down, there's no passengers on board. It's usually one person at best on board, maybe a deckhand. That doesn't give us a really good view of how the vessel operates. So we want to get out there when passengers are going to be boarding the vessel so that we can first, before passengers board, talk to the crew and ask them about their emergency procedures and their safety responsibility. EMI is going to do a quick walk through the vessel just to see what does that vessel look like in today's operation with passengers. So, if it's around the 4th of July, is there a lot of flammable streamers that are being posted all over the ship that aren't there when we're normally there in January or February? And then the marine inspector will observe passenger embarkation, see how the crew interacts with them, see how the safety brief goes, and then depart the vessel before the vessel gets underway. So the intent is to minimize any impact on the operations, but still get a good feeling that that vessel has a proactive safety system in place, that the crew and master know what they're doing. Other aspects of our risk program is that we've created a dynamic job aid that will be used to focus the inspectors on a handful of items. And those handful of items will change based on our data analytics. So if we start to see a rise in a certain type of casualty, we'll point our inspectors into that system or subsystem. We'll also be using the inspectors to go out and specifically look at certain parts of the vessel to inform regulatory projects or policies that we're working on at headquarters. We've also required the officer in charge marine inspection to review the higher risk vessel inspection reports or the tier 1 vessel inspection reports and all COI renewal inspections. So this is the captain that is the commanding officer at a sector. They're required now to validate that inspection. And then finally, my office, along with the districts, will provide internal Coast Guard oversight of the inspection activities. And so we pull a few inspections every day to read through the activities to ensure that the field is following the policies like they're supposed to. All right, so I am going to transition over to what we see that is coming down in terms of regulations. I've got a couple of slides here, and then we'll take a look to see what questions people have. So the Coast Guard Authorization Act of 2020 required the Coast Guard to prescribe regulations for covered small passenger vessels. And the law has said that a covered small passenger vessel are those subchapter T and K vessels that are on oceans or coastwise routes, or those with overnight accommodations for passengers. We ran an analysis of the current fleet, and we see that there's 1,140 so vessels that will need to meet these new regulations. There's a total of 8 interim requirements for these covered vessels, 5 that apply to all the covered vessels. This includes additional fire detection, suppression, firefighting equipment, guidance on handling and operation of flammable items, and increased crew training for firefighting and egress. Additionally, for those vessels that have overnight passengers, there's some requirements about night watch standing, means of escape, and emergency egress. So in this case, the way the law was set up, the Coast Guard will move directly to a interim final rule project rather than what we would call a notice of proposed rulemaking, where the rule goes out for comment, we take the comments back, and we revise the regulations from there. That's not how this first set of regulations are going to be rolled out. Congress directed us to go straight to a final rule. Oops. The last one, I don't have a slide on it, and hopefully you had a chance to see this in the winter, but the Coast Guard did put out a notice of proposed rulemaking for safety management systems on subchapter T and subchapter K vessels. And that notice of proposed rulemaking or notice of comment will take the information from the industry on what they feel would be effective safety management systems that could be employed upon smaller vessels. We have seen now that safety management systems are used, obviously, on deep draft vessels that move internationally, a large portion of the towing vessel fleet, that those vessels that incorporate a safety management system are better able to manage the safety of their vessel on a day-to-day basis, rather than just when the Coast Guard Marine Inspector comes out for inspection. So we are the director for standards and regulations. His group are going through the comments, and they'll draft up some proposed regulations, and that will probably go back out for comment from the public. All right, so I am going to stop there and see what questions people have. Let me stop sharing my screen.
Great, thank you so much. Yeah. Can we just define real quick what a covered vessel is?
Yeah, so a covered vessel is a subchapter T or subchapter K vessel that is on an oceans or a coastwise route, or any route that has overnight passengers.
Okay, and are we just talking about inspected vessels, or does this also include uninspected vessels?
Right, so the new regulations would only apply to inspected vessels. However, there are regulations on the books and in law that if you have overnight passengers, even if you're uninspected, there are certain requirements that have to be met. So you still, even as an uninspected passenger vessel, you still have to maintain, for example, a night watch to ensure that you know, if there's an accident at night, they can awaken the people on board.
Okay, great. It looks like we have one question here that says, and actually this, my understanding is that smoke alarms are required, but this person says, why is Coast Guard reluctant to require smoke alarms? Is that, so what is the situation with smoke alarms?
Okay, so they aren't required in all spaces. There was a difference in the regulations from what we would say, so new T or new subchapter T, which came into effect in March 1996, that has slightly different requirements than, or old T has slightly different requirements than new T. Also, the fire detection systems that are will be required need to be such that if one smoke detector goes off, it sounds an alarm throughout the ship, not just a single detector.
Right, that seemed like that was the conclusion from the Conception fire as well.
That's right.
Okay. All right. So there's a few of us who are running and working on uninspected vessels.
Mm-hmm.
And the way to try to make sure we're in compliance, we'll call up the Coast Guard Auxiliary to come and have a look. And I guess my personal question about that is, what is the regulation for carbon monoxide monitors?
Wow, that is a good question. I don't know off the top of my head. That's something that we have to look at, especially with respect to uninspected passenger vessels or recreational vessels, either one.
Okay. All right.
Yvonne, I just want to interject something. I was hesitant to write in the chat since I'm recording this. I didn't know how it would affect what I'm doing here. I have a couple of questions and a comment as far as the CO detectors. I ran a boat that had expired CO detectors. It was uninspected, and I told the owner, you got to change these out, and he did. Because I think the ones that were on there were 10 years old, and they were way out of compliance in terms of the safety of the passenger, especially if you have a generator running at the same time as the engines, particularly on gas-powered vessels, gasoline engines. But I have three distinct questions here that I wanted to ask you. Pre-pandemic, I'll put it that way. We noticed an increase in boardings on the Potomac River on a lot of commercial vessels. Was this part of this, what do you call it, CIC? Or training or what?
So you're saying they were boardings from a Coast Guard small boat? Is that
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you are running an uninspected vessel?
No. This is something different. These were commercial vessels that hold COIs, and a couple of really large, like dinner boats,
Mm-hmm.
that were actually boarded several times, and not at the dock. This was while the boats were underway.
Right. So no, that wasn't part of our concentrated inspection campaign. Typically, we do not. Typically, we don't board inspected passenger vessels underway. There may have been. I don't know if there was an agreement with the owner operator that there was some training that was going to go on, or occasionally the small boat stations do like to interact with vessels while they're underway, just in case there's an emergency that they do have to get on, that they have proficiency. So I don't know the exact issue. Okay,
we just noticed it. Those of us that, so I run commercial vessels in on Potomac River in the DC area, and I just noticed that, and those of us that are out there were just commenting on the fact that, wow, there are a lot of them out here. This was before the COVID hit and everybody had to go inside. Another question I have is, what determines the tier assignments for the vessels, like
Right.
tier 1, tier 2?
Yeah, good question. So what we do is so risk, if we look at risk is probability times consequence that something will happen, right? And so we used over 20 years of data within our Coast Guard database and we put all this data into a program that has machine learning and artificial intelligence, and it found connections between types of vessels, types of casualties, and types of deficiencies, and essentially gave us, for every vessel in our fleet, what was the probability that there would be a negative outcome on that vessel, okay? Not that there was going to, but just what is the probability? So we took that probability, and then we also looked at the consequence. And so the consequence would be largely driven to, if there's a bad thing that happens, how bad is that going to be? So how many passengers are involved? What is the route that the vessel is on? You know, so if you had two sister ships and one was on a rivers route and one was on an oceans route and it carried the same number of passengers, you know, a vessel that has a problem in an oceans route, that's really a bad day because it's going to take longer for search and rescue assets to get out there. The seas are going to be rougher, just a variety of problems, as opposed to a vessel on a rivers route, which is closer to either land or search and rescue assets. So we took those formulations, we multiplied them together. Every vessel was assigned a product, a number, and then we sorted the vessels, drew some lines. So about 10% of our vessel fleet is what we would call that tier 1. So they get a little bit more of inspection. And then tier 2 and tier 3 is split between about the remainder, 40%, 45% or so, 44%, 80, 90. So whatever the percentage is off the, they're split between those two numbers. So it was a good opportunity for us to really make that data that we have had in our database for so many years and use it to inform our vessel inspection side.
Okay. I just had other quick, where can we get hold of, what is it, notice of proposed rulemaking or comments? Can we get how do we get a copy of that?
Yeah, I think the easiest way is if you Google Coast Guard and Unified Agenda, it will come up with all the different regulatory actions that the Coast Guard currently has underway. And there's about 15 or so. Some of them affect passenger vessels, some affect towing vessels and whatnot. So just, you can see the safety management system one and click on it and it'll bring up the information there. I believe the first comment period closed June 1st, May 1st or June 1st, one of those. So you can keep your eye open for when the next one comes out.
Okay, so it's all available online.
It is.
Oh, good. Okay.
It is.
Okay. That's all I have.
All right.
Thank you.
Captain Edwards, we have a question here from Hans. Wanted to know a little bit more about what is expected of the night watch standard.
For an uninspected vessel, you know, the idea is the person should be up, awake, and alert for any you know, fire, flooding, or other types of damage that there might be on a vessel that they would have to awaken people up to get them out. For an inspected vessel, that's what the regulation, well, the regulations will be a little bit more prescriptive than where we were in the past. Previously said that you should stand there should be I don't think it used the term roving watch standard, but something to that fact that the person should be up and about going through the different spaces. I think you'll see a little bit more prescriptive requirements in the regulations when they come out.
Okay. Looking through the mishap report for Conception, it had the escape hatch was pretty small and hard to get in and out of. And I noticed that a part of your office is on construction. So has there been any changes in construction requirements in terms of escape hatches and changes in design?
Right. So the Conception was a vessel that was built to old T standards that arguably may not have been able to have that same escape arrangement. I think that you would probably see future escape hatches that will not be permitted in that manner. We'll have to wait to see how the regulations are actually formed when they come out, because it's very hard to change the construction of a vessel once it's already been built. Sometimes there are retroactive requirements that go in place, but typically those retroactive requirements are more of things that get bolted on to the ship rather than changes in how the ship is, like where the bulkheads are located, those items. So I can tell you that marine inspectors are very focused now on emergency egress spaces, and they're trying them out more often. And if they can't get through it, they're going to require the vessel to do some sort of alteration just to ensure that people can use those emergency escapes.
Excellent. You spoke a lot about human factors. Do you see a future of that required training for human factors for inspected and perhaps even uninspected?
Right. Well, definitely uninspected. In fact, the new requirements for subchapter TK covered vessels are going to require a greater amount of training. And I think that's where safety management systems really come in, that you can tailor the training, the checklist, those things to the actual vessel. I know when we say safety management systems, too often there's a reflex that those are for large vessels, that they're a binder that sits on the shelf that people don't use. And I would say that was probably true about a decade ago. It was a check in the box for the ISM code. We've gotten better at them, but I would say that the El Faro casualty was really the wake up on safety management systems. And one of the first things we did within CVC4, our Flag State Control Division, was we refocused our marine inspectors on safety management systems, as well as the industry, to not have it as that binder on the bookshelf, but rather checklists that they use every day. Just like a pilot, when a pilot takes off and lands, there's a checklist that they go through to ensure that they don't miss something. And so that's what we're looking at. That's been our push on safety management systems. And in fact, even our port state control exams for foreign vessels that come into our country, if we see a serious casualty on board the vessel or a serious deficiency, we ask them, what is their safety management system? What are they doing about it? And if it's not adequate, we detain the vessel and it can't go until they've fixed it or done the required training. And so even in a short term internationally, we've seen an increase in these safety management systems. So, I'm optimistic as they come into play for small passenger vessels. It doesn't have to be this great big binder of things, but rather it's simply said, it's say what you do what you say, and be able to prove it. So look at what you do on board, have it written down somewhere, and have some sort of record to prove that that's how you're doing it, and you're able to continually improve your safety on board the vessel.
Yeah, that seems an effective way to handle it for sure. All right, looks like we have one more question here. Philip Gothier says, it's interesting that there's no action for the changing of lithium batteries, but I think those are getting safer. I don't know. What are your thoughts on that?
So we did put out a marine safety information bulletin to alert people of the dangers of, among other things, lithium ion batteries. So, I think we have seen that there have been problems with lithium ion batteries, whether it's the Samsung telephone, or there were some kid toys that had batteries that melted down. I think with new technology, we just have to be smart at how it's being used and stored on board vessels, and they're kept in the right spot. So again, marine inspectors are going to look at lithium ion batteries on board, just to see, again, where are they stored at, how are they being used. And we're not talking about necessarily the small rechargeable batteries, but the ones that tend to be a little bit bigger.
And what is there guidance on that at the moment on best practices or?
We do. It's in a marine safety information bulletin. I don't have it off the top of my head, but essentially they should be kept in good condition, using the chargers that they came with, monitor in an area that can be monitored where it's charging, those sort of things.
Okay, very great.
Yeah.
Is a COI ever denied if the vessel cannot meet a requirement? This comes from Priscilla.
Yeah, so that's one of our steps. So every 5 years, we issue a new COI to an inspected vessel in general. And if the vessel doesn't meet the requirements, we can just not issue it. But more often than not, a marine inspector will issue a CG 835V for vessel. And that's a requirement that the master of the vessel has to change in whatever the time allotted by the marine inspector. So if it's a serious issue, they may get a vessel may be given its COI, but it may get a CG 835V that says you can't operate until you do X, Y, and Z. So while you may still have the piece of paper, you can't use it until you've met the other requirements. Or you have to fix this within 30 days or 45 days or what have you.
Sure. Okay. Craig Hubber once says, when is the Coast Guard going to require a basic training course for all recreation boaters on all vessels?
Yeah, that's tough. I don't know as if we have a congressional authorization to even go in that direction, right? So until Congress had says go out and do something, we don't always have the authorization to create regulations for that. I do know that states, I'm not really sure what Maryland, Virginia, and the DC area has, but I know many states have implemented safe boating requirements where at a minimum you have to take a safe boating course before you can go on their waters. So, a lot of times I think the states are in the best position to implement those policies.
Right, I'd agree with that. And yes, Maryland does have one in Virginia. And I know American Sailing Association, their courses count for that. And then I think Florida as well has one. And I think you get a break on your insurance as well. So there's lots of reasons to do it.
Nice.
Yeah. Okay, Han says, for international vessels, do you do that safety inspection offshore or after docking?
We prefer to do the inspection when it is at the pier. One is when we're sending people offshore, anytime you're doing a vessel-to-vessel interaction, that always raises the risk to people involved. Having to go up a pilot ladder, those sort of things. We also don't want to interfere with the crew as they're bringing a vessel in. We want the crew to stay focused on what they're doing. When the vessel comes in, their pier side, that's when we go on board and do our safety inspections.
All right, that sounds great. I think we've come to the end of our questions. I don't know if there's any last minute that people might like to chime in and ask. All right. Well, thank you so much, Captain Edwards. That was really informative, and it's great to see it's such an approach that really wants to engage everyone versus punitive, and seeing a sort of a change of culture towards one that is going to embrace safety and changes for safety and something that's every day. And because you could kind of see that breakdown in the El Faro accident, that it was just safety got pushed to the back burner, and then the worst happened.
Right. I forgot to mention, I think the job aids in particular, but we do make these public facing so the public can get a hold of these and use them as well. I know some of my best days as a marine inspector would be to come up to a vessel, and the master of the vessel had already been through our job aid before we got there. and check to ensure that their vessel was in inspection condition and how they had monitored it over the year. That's really where we want people to be, that they're, the Coast Guard is not the quality control of the vessel, but those that are operating it, who know their vessel best, are proactively managing the safety of their vessels. So yeah, however we can get there is kind of, I think, best for everyone.
What did you call it? What's the program?
We call it their job aids.
Job aid.
Yeah. I think, again, if you Google commercial vessel compliance, you should be able to find them on our website.
Okay, and so that for an uninspected, that's sort of us collaborating with Coast Guard Auxiliary to make sure.
Right. I know there's something, you can get the same forms that the Coast Guard Auxiliary uses as part of their check as well. I just don't have those at my fingertips as well. But, each one of those is going to have the reg site that's associated with it. So if you have a question on what it is, you can go to the reg site and see if you're in compliance, or give someone a call if you have a question about it.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, since we've come to the end here, we'd just like to say thank you so much. And we'll be sending this to Edwards as our thank you for spending time with us today and help making us safer as Marine captains, Coast Guard captains.
Well, thanks so much. I appreciate that.
Yeah, just as an aside, Captain, completely off the subject, but I think you guys do a wonderful job of training your people. The Coast Guardies, the Coasties I come in contact with are just unfailingly polite, decent young men and women. And I just don't know how you do that. I mean, every one of them.
Well, great. Hey, thanks for the input. I'll just, I know it's a little bit off topic, but I will say that the Coast Guard has invested about, I think we're up to, $5 million in the training of our Marine inspectors under a new program. I'm excited over the next few years as we implement this program that you're going to even see a better knowledge base of our inspectors, that they're going to have the technology at their fingertips to be a little bit more efficient than what we are now, and really adopt in the future of marine inspections.
Thank you.
All right. Super. Well, with that, I think I'll turn it back over to you, Bill.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Matt. It was a great presentation. And I know you said that we all met in Baltimore someplace 20 years ago, but I think I've run into you since then, either at one of the, which I miss, the get-togethers that you guys do with the commercial operators, either at the Rod and Reel or on the Eastern Shore.
Right.
But I know we've talked in the past. Yvonne, can you let us know who's coming up?
Absolutely. So next week we have Captain Edwards just down the way from you. We're going to have Angel Calderon come, and he's the inspector for commercial fishing, I believe. Is that right?
Yeah, that'll be great. In fact, he was stationed up in Baltimore before he joined us at Coast Guard headquarters. So yeah, that'll be great to hear from him.
Great. Yep. So that's next month. That's coming on the 26th of July. And then on the 27th of September, because we skip August, we'll have Annie Richards from River Keepers. So we can hear what the latest is with conservation on the Chesapeake. And then in October, we'll have Captain Lou Novak talk to us about volunteer opportunities for captains. And then it was recently, we'll see how this turns out, but we got a connection to the super yacht Usher. The captain of that is interested to talk to us about his job and job opportunities and working those mega yachts. And I guess there's some potential connections to, what is it, Bill?
Below Decks.
Below Decks. I still got to watch it.
Yeah, it's like a soap opera for sailors,
That's right.
Okay, well, thank you, Yvonne. Thank you, Matt. As Yvonne mentioned, we do not meet in August, so next month will be our last Zoom meeting until September. I'd like to remind everybody that in a not too distant future, we have elections coming up. You will be getting a slate of candidates in the next couple of months that for your review. There are several of us that are coming up for reelection. And there will be a committee that will be putting together the slate. So with that being said, everybody have a good 4th of July, a safe 4th of July. And we'll see you next month. Thank you.
Thank you.
Recording.